Well, it's about a week since the federal government in a huge ceremony announced the transformation of state-owned Nigerian National Petroleum Corporation, NNPC, to a state-owned commercial enterprise and changing it to the NNPC Ltd. In line with the provisions of the Petroleum Industry Act 2021. Well, shares of the company held by the government are not transferable or mortgaged unless approved by the government and the National Economic Council. For President Muhammadu Buhari and his team, the NNPC Ltd would guarantee energy security free from institutional regulation. But to many Nigerians, this is just a change of name and it may not have any impact on the citizen. Well, for more on this, Special Assistant to the President on Public Affairs, Ajuri Ngelale, joins me now. Thank you so much. It's good to see you on the Arise interview. Before you came in, we had a chat with the Senator Baribe and, of course, the former Commissioner of Police, Lagos State, Fatai Owusheni. I'm sure you listened to what they had to say. Burning issues, very urgent issues of national concern. The Senate is saying they're giving the president 6 weeks to address the security challenges. Otherwise, he faces impeachment proceedings.
Well, thank you very much, Ngozi, for having me, and thank you also for starting off with this question. You know, the fact of the matter is we do have challenges in this country, especially related to security. That's not a secret to anybody. Certainly, we have no interest in pretending as if that's not a problem. But what we need in the country now, aside from an effective strategy to deal, in finality with this issue of insecurity, is a thinking and intellectual opposition in the country. You said it was the Senate, but if you look at the composition of those involved, you'd recognize that it's actually the minority component of the Nigerian Senate. You had chants
that was
such
stated
as
clearly.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, exactly. So it's a block of senators, not the entire Senate. And I think what's also important is if you heard the chants, it's Lawan must go, Buhari must go. That is what they were saying. We need to go beyond gimmickry in the country. Gimmicks are not going to solve our problem.
It's a gimmick?
Yes, I want to be very clear about what I mean.
I'll let you land on that just to put this in so we have better perspective.
Absolutely.
Femi Falana, respected senior advocate of Nigeria, in joining the rally, the protest, where the support for ASU by the NLC, he actually did call that, made a call that Buhari must go.
No, let's not join issues. I'm not referring to the NLC. I'm not referring to the respected senior advocate of Nigeria. I'm talking about the action that took place today by political office holders, by those entrusted by the Nigerian people to help the federal government, to help the executive administration find solutions to these problems. Those who are holding the purse strings, they're not held to the same standard as citizens who do not have the official power to make those decisions that will actually lead to the conclusion of this problem. So when I talk about an intellectual opposition, what do I mean? Let me be very concrete about this. When I say gimmickry, I'm talking about actions for a kind of political theater to make the point that these people are incompetent, they're terrible, they should go so that you will elect us. That's not what we're interested in. Nigerians are interested in solutions. So what I'm saying is that if we have a thinking and intellectual opposition in this country, what they would be thinking about doing or working toward doing rather, is even if it's to engage international security consultants to come up with a clear plan, an implementable plan, to say, look, this is what the current administration is doing. We don't agree with it. We don't think it's working. This is what we want to put on the table. And if you elect us, we will now execute on this.
But according to them, they have put so much on the table. They have come up with all kinds of suggestions and ways forward to tackle Nigeria's security challenges. But they've been jettisoned by the president. That's what they're saying.
What are those suggestions? Are those suggestions that the president should resign? Are the suggestions that the security chief should be sacked? These are the kind of simple-minded statements and quote-unquote solutions that don't lead anywhere. We spent almost 4 or 5 years asking the president to sack the previous service chiefs, that if we do that, all will be uhuru. That is what the opposition made everybody to believe. They were sacked. They were replaced, right? We began to see gains and everything. Now we're having a different sort of problem that's coming up. Now, the solution, again, is it to sack everybody? If you go to the United States now, where you have school shootings, shootings in malls, shootings on the streets, shootings everywhere, nobody is saying that Joe Biden should resign, or that they're looking at, okay, what is it that we actually need to do to solve this problem?
Yeah, not just where Nigerians stand, it does seem that this government does not have solutions.
Let me just land my point, please, if I can, without being interrupted on this.
Yeah.
We also understand that the local and state governments have a role to play in internal security. We know that it's not just a federal issue.
Right.
There has to be effective collaboration. I am not suggesting that we have all of the answers, or that we have done everything exactly right, or that every leader across the security agencies are doing everything exactly the way that it should be done. That's not what I'm saying. What I am saying is that it benefits the nation if we have an opposition that is thinking instead of making political statements like the one that was made in the National Assembly today. That's all I'm saying.
Yeah, but your statement sounds a bit political too.
But mine is actually in the interest of the nation. If I was being political, I would tell you that President Muhammadu Buhari and the service chiefs have all the solutions. Nigerians should just be patient with us. That's not what I'm saying. What I am saying is that the opposition are made up of Nigerians. They are Nigerians who are seeking power. So what we're saying is, if you're seeking power, fantastic, it's your right. In fact, good luck in the elections. But what we're saying is that it is in the interest of this country if you are part of the solution and not part of a political theater that leads to nowhere. That's all I'm saying.
And that solution seems to be what they're trying to come up with. But let's come to the issue at hand. You know, with all of this events in recent times, the security challenges, talking about the change of name, you know, from NNPC to NNPC Limited seems to be the last thing on the minds of Nigerians. But you know what they say, a rose by any other name will still smell like a rose. The more things change, the more they remain the same. Exactly.
That's a loaded introduction. You've already given your opinion on the idea.
No, it's not an opinion, because I'm reflecting what people are saying, and it's my job to do that.
Perhaps the way to go now would be for me to clearly explain what the differences are, so that people know that it's not just a cosmetic rebranding.
Right.
First and foremost, the new NNPC Limited emanates from the Petroleum Industry Act that, of course, was delayed for 20 years for obvious political reasons. It has now been done. Now, what this means, these are the differences. First and foremost, aside from moving from being a public corporation that was essentially reliant upon the National Assembly and the Federal Executive Council to be able to, obtain approvals for various investments that they wanted to make, whether it's upstream, midstream, or downstream, whether it's retail, filling stations, or joint ventures in the deep offshore and in the inland projects, they would have to go through a long bureaucratic process. And there's a lot of, we all know the kind of give and take that has happened historically in the National Assembly. What the president has done, and credit to the 9th National Assembly under the Senate president for showing the political will to get the PIA done, because what it did is to free the NNPC Limited from all of this bureaucratic and political interference, meaning that they are now in position to take independent investment decisions on behalf of the 200 million stakeholders in the country, to be able to effectively compete with other oil companies around the world. What we had before was a situation where, I'll just give you an example of filling stations, for example. The NNPC, 44 years in its existence, it took them about almost 20 years to start the first retail filling station in the country, a little bit more than 20 years. 2002 was the first NNPC retail filling station under the Obasanjo administration. Today we have about 500 or so retail filling stations across the country. Now, the group CEO Mele Kyari made the announcement at the unveiling of the new NNPC that we're going to move from 500 retail filling stations in the country to over 1,500 retail filling stations in the country within the next 6 months. 6 months. It's time-based. So that's something that Nigerians can hold us to account when we get across that 6-month mark. Did we do it or did we not do it? But that's what he has said. The reason why he can make that commitment is because he now has the financial and decision-making independence to be able to make policy on the basis of profit-seeking, profit maximization for the sake of the stakeholders. That's number one. Number two, it's no longer, the NNPC is no longer has to abide by public sector regulations that slow things down, such as the Public Procurement Act, such as the Fiscal Responsibility Act, such as the Treasury Single Account. And the reason why that is because 2 new special purpose vehicles have been created for the purpose of the new NNPC Limited's operation, which is the Ministry of Petroleum Incorporated, one vehicle, and the Ministry of Finance Incorporated, MOFI. Those 2 SPVs are now going to hold the federal government's stake in terms of of the revenue generation from the NNPC Limited, instead of having everything in one central pot where you have all the confusion and all the give and take, they're now able to operate independently with 20%. I need to state this: 20% of all of the profits on oil and gas projects under the new NNPC Limited will now be under the total independent custody of the NNPC Limited, to be able to reinvest on the basis of the discretion and decision making of the leadership.
Let me come in here. With all of this said, beautiful, it sounds fantastic on paper. The question is how. Okay, great. We don't even have all all day. Yeah, we don't have the time.
Yes.
But how exactly will this improve the lives of 200 and something Nigerians? We're told that we're all shareholders, right? And our interests will be protected. How are we going to be getting dividends? When will the dividends roll in?
Fantastic question. So that's the reason why I started with the filling station example, just to make it practical and understandable for everybody. When you have that kind of scale of retail opportunity within the NNPC Limited, when you have 1,500 stations instead of 500, what does that mean? That means Nigerians are going to have more opportunity to go to those NNPC filling stations and do what? Purchase their fuel, purchase their engine oils, purchase even small snacks or whatever it is that they want to buy there. That is money that is going to be ultimately spent into the coffers of the NNPC Limited, that is now going to be part of the revenue generating base of the entire federation. So instead of paying a Total that will now be taking their funds, back to France, or Shell taking back to home country, you're now bringing it basically to where it will rotate. And
what about the liabilities of the old NNPC? I mean, we hear from the shareholders that there's a $60 billion asset base.
Right.
Help us understand where the $60 billion come from.
Oh, first and foremost, we have billions of dollars in stakes in joint venture projects in the deep offshore as well as inland projects. That's just scratching the surface of it. That's not obviously including many of the other assets that have not even been tapped into. Now, on top of that, we haven't even talked about refining and gas. Under this administration, and these are verifiable things, the $2.8 billion, 614-kilometer Ajeokuta to Kaduna to Kano gas pipeline is part of that strategic initiative to ensure that we can expand our revenue generating base by exporting Nigerian gas into the international markets, up through northern Nigeria, across the Sahara, into the Algerian pipeline network that will eventually carry it into Western Europe over the next few years, effectively positioning Nigerian gas to be the competitor with Russian gas as they seek to move away from Russian gas, looking for an alternative. The president put that in place even before the Russian crisis. That's vision. Now, in addition to all of that, in refining, the Port Harcourt refinery, 210,000 barrels per day. We are currently at about, we're finishing phase 1 in March 2023. We started March 2021. This is a real verifiable rehabilitation. We've taken the media there. They've seen it in action. They know what's going on. And we're going to complete that by March 2023. So I want to be clear on what we're promising.
What about the other 3 refineries? Kaduna refinery?
No, 2 others. It's Warri and Kaduna.
Others, yes,
exactly.
Warri and Kaduna,
so what we're focused on is, obviously, finances are limited, so you have to prioritize. We prioritize Port Harcourt because it has the most capacity, the most refining capacity, and naturally that it's closer to the infrastructure that would allow you to get the crude into the facility to be processed.
As quickly as possible.
Absolutely. Warri and Kaduna are also on the roadmap, but that's not the first priority is Port Harcourt. You get one and then you go into the others.
Right.
So where we are is this. I want to be clear so people can hold us to account on these things. By March 2023, the first 60,000 barrels per day, which is the old phase 1, started in 1965, it's going to be fully completed, meaning we're going to be refining, before the end of this administration, we'll be refining about 54,000 barrals out of 60,000 barrels original capacity.
2023, we'll be refining 53,000 barrels per day?
By March 2023. By March 2023, out of the 210, we'll be refining 54,000 barrels out of the original 60,000 barrels in the old refinery in Port Harcourt. Then you have the new refinery expansion, which started in 1989, which is 150,000 barrels per day. We're going to be refining 135,000 out of that 150,000 by December 2023. That is the end of next year.
That's a lot of hope.
No, it's not. These are verifiable. These are promises that are time bound. So
absolutely.
You can hold
but
us
let me come in with this. I mean, old wine in, is it new wine in old bottle?
No. That's how it's
put.
The Port Harcourt refinery has 2 phases: the 60s and the 80s one.
Let me land on this. The personnel in the old NNPC, we've been told there's not going to be any layoffs.
That's correct.
People are not going to be sacked.
That's right.
But there were reports recently that about 500 people would be laid off. They are being advised, to accept to go.
That's
you
not
know,
a layoff.
with some conditions.
No, that's not a
You
layoff.
know,
What we've
those
said
to retire between now and 2023.
What we've said very clearly is that there will be, first of all, there will be no layoffs. Number two, there will be no adjustments to pre-existing or currently built pensions. So for former staff and for current staff, no changes to pensions, no changes to benefits. We've said that openly. Okay. What you're referring to is a voluntary. That's what I want to touch that. The voluntary option that has been presented to some staff is they now have a choice whether they would like to stay, so they can stay without not being sacked, whether they like to stay or they can take a package and they can go. It's up to them. So that's not a layoff.
Right. Now, one of the major challenges in the old NNPC was the issue of transparency, the issue of opaqueness and all of that, and maybe lack of capacity. People who've been employed over the years have only just been employed, because it's a child of, of who they knew and all of that. Do they have this new NNPC? Do you have the right skill set to ensure that all of these dreams that you talk about, the new vision for the NNPC Limited, can actually, take off from day one?
Yeah, thank you very much, Ngozi. I think it's important to note that we're not interested in dreams. We're interested in continuing what we've already done and started. So when we're talking about...
how are you going to change personnel mentality?
No, well, this is the thing. So I think a lot of the time, look at what has happened in the last 3 or 4 years. And I think this is why it requires a bit of discernment to be able to appreciate what we've done over the last 3 or 4 years as against the previous 20. But let me just be clear. It was before the NNPC Limited took off, the new NNPC Limited took off. Before then, we didn't wait. For the first time in the 44-year history of the institution, of the NNPC, we opened up the books to the Nigerian public. Bloomberg reported it, Reuters reported it because it was such a big deal. We opened up the books to everybody. Again, after that, this is under the same leadership, under GMD then, Mele Kyari, now GCEO Mele Kyari. In addition to that, we reported for the first time in decades a profit after tax of 287 billion. This is after decades of consecutive loss reportage. We're now doing profit after tax.
That's understood.
Now, 287 billion naira after tax is obviously a pittance compared to what we can be doing, but it's a starting point to show that we're moving in the right direction. So what my point is to say that we already have the manpower at the leadership level and junior mid-staff to be able to take the NNPC where they needed to go. What we needed to get out of the way is the kind of political and bureaucratic interference where a president somewhere is calling the NNPC CEO and a GMD and saying this is what you're going to do, or the Senate committee chairman on petroleum resources is saying you're going to do this contract and this contract, or we're not going to give you your budget. This is what we have now put into the history books forever. It will never come back.
Nigerians are going to be waiting to see how this NNPC Limited will play out. Will it meet their dreams? But we will not end this chat without talking about what's going on across the country. It seems every sector is shutting down. The bakers went on strike. Thankfully, they have, called it off. That doesn't mean the challenges, that led them to strike have been off the table. ASU is on strike right now. NLC is, in a solidarity protest with them and has also threatened that it will go on strike if the issues of ASU are not addressed. Aviation, there's crisis there. The Sovereign Wealth Fund is supposed to, meet some of these emergency, funding situations. What exactly is happening with that? Because in 2018, let me even just back up a little, right? In 2018, the excess crude account declined from $2.3 billion to 63 million naira dollars. There's security challenges also. Why is nothing coming out from the Sovereign Wealth Fund to address the funding issues of ASU, for example? The aviation, sector is collapsing. They need funding. They've been asking government to give them funding. What's happening with Sovereign Wealth Fund?
Let's understand, first of all, that the excess crude account that was inherited in 2015 by President Muhammadu Buhari was $2 billion. If you would recall that as of 2011, that fund was $50 billion. $50 billion spent down to $2 billion within 4 years. Nobody knows what happened to that money. I think people know, but there's nothing to show for it. Now, you have $2 billion that we inherited. $1 billion of that which well known to all Nigerians, that all the governors came together and approved $1 billion for the expenditure on a security fund that was part of the purchases that had to do with the Super Tucanos, which have now been delivered. These are public contracts, government to government, no middleman in between the United States and the Nigerian government. So there's nothing to hide there. Helicopters, naval boats, so many armed drones.
Yeah, there's so many. They don't seem to translate into success.
No, this is part of the lamentation syndrome we have to break. Is that last year in 2021, what happened last year? We had the ISWAP leader, if you recall, the leader of ISWAP. His name is escaping me right now. I almost never forget. But he was killed last year, the son of the founder of Boko Haram. He was killed. Al-Barnawi, I'm sorry, Al-Musab Al-Barnawi, yes. He was taken off of the field last year, 2021. In the same year, the leader of Boko Haram, Abubakar Shekau, was taken off of the field. Those are two leaders of the two branches that we're talking about, were removed from the field in 1 year, last year. The idea that we have not effectively pushed back in several different parts of the country is not true. It is true to say that there are new evolving threats that have to do with internal, external collaboration.
Can we justify the almost $20 billion that's been spent in the last 4 years on security?
$20 billion?
Yes, between 2016 and 2022, $19.9 billion spent on security.
What's the source of your figures, though?
The Central Bank of Nigeria.
Well, I would say, first of all, that if you're saying that there's $20 billion that have been spent on security, that there should be a breakdown of that. What I'm very familiar with is what you asked me about, which is the excess crude account and how it was spent. And so what I'm saying is with these new platforms, we've clearly made progress. Now, clearly, we're not where we want to be yet. Nobody is going to paint that picture, but we have a lot of work still to do.
Absolutely. Ajuri Ngelale, thank you so much for joining us. SSA to the President on Public Affairs. Well, that's it for this edition of the Arise interview. Do join us again. From me and the entire team here in Abuja, goodbye and thanks for watching.